Mr. Mayor, you are live.
Thank you very much. We are live. I'm calling the meeting to order. It is 5:08 PM. We have, I believe Counselor Garcia is remote. And Counselor Amanda Chavez is not going to be with us tonight. She's excused. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Counselor Cassett. Salute to the New Mexico flag led by Counselor Lindell, and an invocation followed by remembrances led by Counselor Romero Worth. Please stand as you are able.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. I'd ask that we bow our heads in reflection and that we take a moment to be grateful for the roles we serve in, and the opportunities we have to better this community, to work on the problems that we are presented with, and that we think about and reflect on, even though these jobs are very hard sometimes, there can also be very rewarding, and it's a tremendous honor. And I just want us to take a moment to note that, because I don't know that we do all the time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there remembrances that people would like this time to call? If there aren't any specifics, I would then just again ask all of us to take a minute and reflect on those who are in our community, who are dealing with hardship, dealing with illness, dealing with loss, struggling, but they are part of our community, and our thoughts are with them, and we wish them healing and support. Let's just take a minute for everyone in our city who need help. Thank you, everybody. Madam Clerk, do you want to call the roll, please?
Mayor Weber,
Present.
Councillor Cassett,
Here.
Councillor Lee Garcia.
Here.
Present.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Sorry about that. Present.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Lindell, Councillor Rivera,
Here.
Councillor Mayor Worth,
Here.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Mayor,
Nope, what am I missing? There's changes to the agenda.
yes, there is one change to the agenda. We are removing item 10A from the discussion agenda.
Item 10A, which is what?
I was just about to read it. Item 10A is request for approval of general service contract with Ameresco Asset Sustainability Group LLC for asset planner software to continue facilities asset management in the total amount of $500,032.08, including NMGRT over a 4-year period.
Point of order or point of information?
Kind of information.
Point of information. It was my understanding that this contract was very important that it go through right now. Are we all on the same page? It did not go to finance, and that's why I know something about it, because we had a long talk about why.
And Mr. Burnett is looking perturbed in the audience. Sidebar conversation.
Mayor, councilors, my apologies. It's C from the city attorney's office that we're pulling.
And C.
Yep.
Not 10A. Okay. You guys squared away?
Yes.
So 10A remains, 10C will not be heard tonight. Are we correct? Yes. So can I get a motion to approve?
I'm sorry, Mayor. Can we have that caption read so everybody knows what is being removed?
Apologies.
Yes.
10C.
Item 10C is recommendation to deny an appeal by Gianna Bass in Gaia Traders LLC doing business as Love for Life Dispensary of the Land Use Director's decision in case number 2023-6588 to deny a request for a variance to operate a retail cannabis business at 1330 Rufina Circle within 400 feet of another licensed cannabis retail business.
So that would be taken off the agenda entirely tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Any discussion at this point? No? Madam Clerk, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And the consent agenda, is there are any changes or things taken from consent?
No, Mayor, there's no items on the consent.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion of the consent agenda? In that case, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell. Yes. Counselor Rivera.
Yep.
Mayor Worth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
thank you. So that would then, Madam Clerk, take us to item 8A, which I believe will also be presented remotely. If you could read that for us.
Yes, Mayor, that item is our presentation for the evening, which is an audit update for fiscal year 21 by our Finance Director, Emily Oster.
Director, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the governing body. Is my audio okay? I have not presented to you virtually, so just want to check. Okay, great. Looks like I'm coming through. I am very pleased to report that we continue to make progress on our audits. We are racing to the finish line on FY21. We're doing exactly what I would expect us to be doing at this stage. We're wrapping up findings, we're preparing for our exit conference, and we're in the right place to be finished with the FY21 audit in the next couple of days. So feeling good about that. We're moving forward with FY21. We are also continuing to wrap up items on FY22 in anticipation of closing that down in Munis in order to open up FY24. We will be performing our year-end close activities in Munis throughout the weekend, beginning on Friday afternoon, on the afternoon of the 30th, going to the 5th of July. And I really want to thank our partners in IT for working some of the holiday weekend with us to get Munis opened up for FY24. We hope to have that open. We expect to have that open after the holiday when folks are returning from the long weekend. So we're looking forward to getting going with FY24. We are in the thick of many different deadlines related to accounts payable and inventory, and folks citywide are pitching in to help us shut down FY22, FY23, and get open up for FY24. So really appreciate everyone's attention to those important deadlines and their conscientious efforts to make sure that we're meeting those. Going back onto the FY21 audit, I just wanted to talk for a moment about what will happen after the report is submitted to the state auditor's office. There is a regulatory process that governs what happens after a report is submitted. It's laid out in state statute, in the Audit Act, and then in state administrative code in the audit rule. So to quickly summarize that process, the state auditor's office will conduct a review, and at this point it's referred to as a draft audit report. And once they're done with their review, they will send us a report that's called an OK to print communication, that will have their comments and any changes they want us to make. That'll go to me and to the independent public accountant, and we will work together to update the audit report within 5 business days, and then we will submit a draft, a final version of the report to the Office of the State Auditor. And the Office of the State Auditor will then conduct their final report review, and then they will issue what's called a release letter. And then after that, there's a 5-day waiting period that's set out in the Audit Act and state statute, and then the report will become a public record. After the report becomes a public record, the audit report will be presented by the independent public accountant, Clifton Larson Allen, to you, to the governing body at a public meeting held in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. So that gives a little bit of a sense of what's to come in the process. The submittal of the report is a very important milestone, and I'm extremely proud of all of the hard work that the team, both city staff and our contractors that are supporting us, have done to get us to this point. And with that, Mr. Mayor and members of the governing body, I would be glad to stand for any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there questions for the director about the audit report? Counselor Michael Garcia, your hand is up, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Oster, thank you, and to your team and to all the auditing team for getting the audit prepped and ready for submission. So I just want to give you kudos and thank you for all of the hard work conducted over the past couple of months. I do got a question in regards to the release letter that you had mentioned, because there will be the initial okay to print, and it's kind of, excuse me, the draft version, then we go back, make corrections, etc. And then we get the final release letter. And then we've got to wait that 5 days, but it's my understanding that we can waive that 5-day period and immediately publish. Am I correct in understanding that?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor and members of the governing body. The statute, which is section 1265 of NMSA 1978, does allow the audited agency to provide written notice to the Office of the State Auditor to waive that 5-day period between when the report is released by the state auditor and when it becomes a public record.
Okay, and so to waive that 5-day period, what is the process for that? Because given that, the audit that's we're going to get completed in this in reference to, it's roughly 18 months past due. And so I would want to get this out into the public domain as quick as possible. So if we can waive that 5-day period, I would like to go that route. So what is the process for us in regards to waiving that 5-day period?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Garcia, the process would be to submit a written notification to the state auditor indicating that the city is waiving that 5-day period.
Would that come from an individual counselor? Would it come from the governing body? Who would that come from, Director Oster?
Mr. Mayor and members of the governing body and Councilor Garcia, it would come from a member of management. I would imagine maybe the city manager would be the one to do that. I would like to consult with the city attorney on that to make sure that we identify the correct person. But my recommendation would be that someone like the city manager would be the person to submit that request.
Okay, if we can get clarification, that'd be great, because again, only speaking for myself, I would like for us to go that route and get this report out to the public as quick as possible and waive that 5-day period. With that, no other questions. Just want to thank you, Director Oster, and your team and the auditing team for all the effort that it took us to get here. So thank you very much. No other questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lee Garcia, and then Counselor Merriworth, you have next.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report, Director Oster. Just a question in regards to the open and close in the Munis system. And so you mentioned that you're working on closing out fiscal year 22-23. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Garcia. So in our Munis system, we are able to have 2 fiscal years open at a time. So in order to open fiscal year 24, which starts on July 1st, we need to close, hard close FY 22 in the Munis system. So that's what I was referring to. So we will not be able to make entries in Munis for FY 22 anymore once we open FY 24.
Thank you. And so you're confident that we have everything done and pretty much buttoned up for 22?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Garcia, I am. I think we have a mechanism if additional entries are identified that need to be recorded for FY 22. We can do those through our consultant, Clifton Larson Allen, that is helping us prepare the financial statements. So we may have a few of those that are in that category, but I'm confident that we'll be able to get them into the trial balance and into the financial statements for FY 22 in order for them to be included in the audit. So I'm confident we're going to be able to get that in order to do what we need to do on the audit for the financial statement.
Thank you. And so closing that out, then going on to 23, and then hopefully we're rolling into a better future here. Thank you for the information.
Thank you. Counselor Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Oster, for being here tonight, and very exciting news that you're delivering to us. I really appreciate it, and that smile is well earned and well deserved to be at the eve of this moment. I am curious. Rules aren't generally arbitrary. There are usually reasons why we have rules. Do you understand or know the background of why there's a 5-day waiting period for the release of the audit to the public? Is that to give time for what? I'm anxious to get this out to the public as well, and I look forward to the hearings that we'll have to review it and the work that will need to be done to resolve any issues that are identified. But I'm just curious, is there a reason why there's a 5-day wait?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Merrill-Worth, I don't know the answer to that. It is part of the statute in the Audit Act. It's section 1265. And I'd be happy to work with the city attorney's office to look at the legislative history. But I don't know the answer to why that statute was written the way it was.
Okay. I think it would be good to know, maybe why there's a 5-day wait and what is contemplated during those 5 days. I don't want us to, be in such a hurry that we don't do whatever it is we should be doing in those 5 days. So, but again, I'm anxious to get this report out too, and delighted to hear that we're on the eve of doing that. So congratulations, and that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Other questions for the director? Counselor? I have a slightly unconnected question, which has to do with a baseball game tonight. I understand that's of great importance. Could you please talk to us about the significance of a championship baseball game?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that is the reason that I'm appearing remotely. My son is representing Santa Fe Little League and the All-Star Blue team in their district championship. It's the District 5 championship. So we're in Albuquerque playing Roadrunner at Altamont Little League this evening. So I enjoy being there in person with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear remotely so that I can cheer my son on and the Santa Fe Blue 10U All-Stars in their championship game.
I think we have a unanimous vote of support for the team tonight as they compete for the championship, and good luck to everybody on the team your son and everybody who's representing carrying the Santa Fe flag down in the ball game. Good luck. Any other not particularly related questions? We're all good. All right. Thank you. Appreciate you. Good luck tonight.
Thank
Madam-
you.
You're welcome. What's next on the agenda, Madam Clerk?
Item 10A is next on the agenda, Mayor. It's request for approval of a general service contract with Ameresco Asset Sustainability Group LLC for asset planner software to continue facilities asset management in the total amount of $500,032.08, including an MGRT over a 4-year period. And Mr. Burnett is already at the podium.
I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second?
There's a motion. There's a second. Mr. Burnett, do you want to speak to this item for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Ameresco Asset Planner is a program the Facilities Division has been using for close to a decade. This program allows us to track all of our facilities related assets. It's the tool we use for planning our preventative maintenance. It's our work order system where individuals throughout the city can submit requests for assistance in any facility, and really is critical or mission critical or core to the services we provide at the city. Very important to what we do. There's a lot of kind of latent potential in this program as well, and we're working to build on that. It allows us to generate really detailed reports on the state of our facilities, on make decisions in terms of capital planning, report on progress. And we're kind of hoping to build on this to be able to come back to the governing body and provide more regular, very information rich updates on the work we're doing and the condition of our facilities. And, you know, in a nutshell, that is Ameresco Asset Planner. If you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Burnett about this item? Counselor Garcia, I don't see you on the screen at the moment. You may have your hand up. Nope, you're good. Okay, thank you, sir. Other questions or comments? Seeing no hands, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Marworth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
thank you. Thank you, Sam. Could you take us to the next item, Madam Clerk, and read it for us?
Yes, the next item on the agenda is item 10B. It's recommendation to deny appeal number 2023-6889 APPL by Stephanie Benenato of the Board of Adjustments decision in case number 2022-6044 to approve sign height variance at Cheese Bootmaker located at 5 Old Santa Fe Trail. And Rebecca is available for this item, our Assistant City Attorney.
The mic is not working. Is there a motion before we go to this presentation?
I'd like to understand the process on this, please, from the city attorney.
Sure.
However, counselors, so this is a recommendation from the city attorney's office to deny a request for an appeal. So it is not a public hearing. There actually is not even a requirement for a presentation. It could just be a written submission for a vote. So it's a discussion item by our code. I think Ms. Monique will get into this, but there was some law submitted that is not in our current code. The current code is in the staff memo, but I think she'll get into that discussion. So absolutely questions regarding the law are appropriate and the staff memo, but this is not sworn testimony. If the vote is to approve, then that final action can be appealed to the district court. If the recommendation is denied, then an appeal with sworn testimony would be heard by the Board of Adjustment. And that would be the quasi judicial matter, would be the hearing in front of the Board of Adjustment, public hearing.
Mayor. And we're not talking about the substance of the appeal tonight. And what would be appealed to the district court would be the procedural matter, not the substance of underlying the appeal.
Mayor Weber, Counselor, that's correct. So the appeal to a district court of this decision would be whether or not the appeal had conformed with the city's rules regarding appeals. So whether it was timely under the rules.
Okay, and there was some suggestion in public comment. We have two motions in our packet of what are acceptable motions for this item tonight. There was some suggestion that there might be a third path under some sort of due process idea provided by our land use director. He's not an attorney. I'm not aware of a third path. I'm not sure. I think we need some clarity. This is a procedural, it's not on the substance. It is whether the appeal meets the requirements or not. And that's all we're talking about tonight.
Mayor Weber, Counselors, that's correct. So it really is about the timeline. And if there's any question about whether or not the facts support the conclusion of the attorney's recommendation, then that would be a reason to deny the recommendation. If the facts as they're known do support the recommendation, then I recommend that you approve it. And the substance, to your point, would be discussed if there were a quasi judicial hearing at the Board of Adjustment.
And if we were to do the motion that says we do not accept the recommendation of the city attorney, we would not then go immediately to hearing the substance of this appeal tonight. We would have to schedule that hearing at another meeting, correct?
And Mayor Weber, Counselor Romero Worth, it would actually be the Board of Adjustment that would schedule the hearing, and they would have the full hearing, and then an appeal could come to this body if it went through that route.
Okay, so it doesn't even come here immediately. It would have to be.
Correct. Mayor Weber, Counselor Romero Worth, that's correct. It would go
And
to the
that's
Board
sort of interesting
Adjustment.
because the appeal that's in front of us tonight is an appeal of what the Board of Adjustment already did.
Mayor Weber, Counselor, it's an appeal of the land use director's assessment that the criteria for an appeal were not met.
On a decision made by the Board of Adjustment.
Mayor Weber, Counselors, on whether the requested appeal met the city's criteria, including timeliness, to go to the Board of Adjustment. So when any appeal is filed for any of our land use boards or the governing, well, if it's directly the governing body, the land use director makes an assessment of whether that appeal meets the criteria, including timeliness. And then our code requires that the land use director works with our office to see if we concur or not with his assessment. In this case, because it's Mr. Klug. And then we assess and we make a recommendation to the governing body, and that's what's in front of you tonight.
Okay, and again, you said this is not a public hearing. This is just, we're looking at what's in our packet here. We're going to hear from your office, and then we're supposed to make a decision.
I'm sorry, you don't have the floor. The public does not have a point of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. I am sorry. I appreciate your interest. You're out of order. I'm sorry, you're out of order. I can't help you. You're out of order. You're going to have to sit down. Thank you. I'm sorry, you're out of order. I apologize. This is not your turn to speak.
And Mayor Ware, Councilors, we had an appeal from Ms. Benenato on a very similar issue to district court when Sally Paez was the attorney for land use, which the city prevailed upon.
So the matter before us, as Councilor Merworth was just clarifying, is not about the substance of the case. It's about whether the finding that the appeal was filed in a timely manner is or is not correct. So it's a process issue, not a matter of the material in the argument about the sign. So is that what you needed? So all of that said, is there a motion in front of the governing body at this time?
Can we hear the presentation, please?
Sure, you can wait. We can take it in that order. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to speak into the mic. Otherwise, the public on Zoom cannot hear you.
That working?
Much
Can you hear
better.
me? Okay, thank you. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. I'm here today to advise the governing body of the city attorney's office's recommendation that appeal petition number 2023-6889 be denied. This recommendation is based solely on lack of conformity with the procedural requirements in the code, specifically the deadlines for filing appeals. And for that reason, I'm not here to discuss the merits of the appeal, but only to recommend denial for lack of conformity. The appellant in this matter is Dr. Stephanie Beninato. Dr. Beninato's appeal arises from a matter that was heard and voted upon by the Board of Adjustment on January 3rd, 2023. During that hearing, the board voted to approve a sign height variance for Lucchese Bootmakers located at 57 Old Santa Fe Trail. Section 14-3.17 of the code governs appeals for a land use board. Under that section, the director must promptly review all appeals for conformity with the requirements of that section. If the director determines that an appeal does not conform with the requirements of the code, the city's code dictates the director then refer that determination to the city's attorney's office for review. If the city attorney's office agrees with the director, the code requires the city attorney's office to prepare a written recommendation for discussion by the governing body. So that's why we're here tonight. If the governing body accepts the city attorney's recommendation that the appeal does not conform with section 14-3.17 of the code, then the appeal is to be rejected for lack of conformity, and the governing body does not reach the substantive merits of the appeal. Consequently, if the governing body accepts the city attorney's recommendation, the decision is final and it may be appealed to district court, as Ms. McSherry explained earlier. So in this case, the director did review the appeal and determined that the appellant failed to file the appeal within 15 days of the date of final action, as is required by the code. In this case, as I stated earlier, the Board of Adjustment voted on the matter on January 3rd. However, that board did not adopt findings of fact and conclusions of law within 35 days of the date of its vote. Section 14-3.17 C4B of our code states that the date of final action occurs when a land use board adopts written findings of fact and conclusions of law, or if the body has not adopted findings of fact and conclusions of law within 35 days of the date of the day on which the vote was decided, then the date of final action shall be deemed to be the 35th day. So because in this case, the board did not adopt written findings of fact and conclusions of law within 35 days of the date of the vote, the date of final action occurred in February 7th of 2023. And I do want to apologize. I think I noted it was February 2nd in my memo, but it would have been February 7th because that would have been 35 days from January 3rd of 2023. And so then Dr. Beninato thereafter had 15 days to file an appeal. And so as the governing body has seen in the memo, the appeal was not actually filed until May. It looks like it was given to Heather Landboy on May 18th, and then the invoice was paid on May 21st or 22nd. And so that the date the invoice was paid is the date the appeal would have been complete. And so that was a little over 3 months after the deadline had passed to file the appeal. I understand that Dr. Beninato has asserted in a public comment she submitted regarding this matter that she should be permitted to review findings of fact and conclusions of law before the time starts to run to file an appeal. So my understanding is that her assertion is that she should be able to get those findings of fact before she needs to prepare that appeal. However, that's not what's stated in our code. Our code does explicitly provide for situations where there are no findings of fact and conclusions of law timely adopted by the body. And in those cases, the time starts to run 35 days after the vote occurs. And so for those reasons, we would submit that the appeal should be denied for lack of conformity. I would submit further that there is a public interest in applying the law fairly and consistently, and we do have very clear directive from the code about when and how an appeal is timely in this situation. And so again, we would submit that the appeal should be denied for lack of conformity at this time and should not go to a full hearing. Two motions are available. The movement may move to accept the recommendation of the city attorney's office on conformity of the appellant's appeal, or the movement may also move to not accept the recommendation of the city attorney's office on the conformity of appellant's appeal, and this matter may be set for a hearing. And that concludes my presentation unless there are any questions for me.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Mayor Weber, councilors, I just wanted to give the opportunity to Ms. Minnick Herman to give her full name to the governing body, because at the beginning she didn't fully introduce herself, and this is her first time to present to you.
Yes, I apologize. Thank you, Ms. McSherry. My name is Rebecca Minnick Herman, and I am new to the city attorney's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we don't have a motion. We did just get the presentation. I'd entertain questions before we go to motion. Counselor Cassidy?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to clarify, so the BOA approved this case on January 3rd, and then they did not have another meeting till May 2nd. And on May 2nd, they did adopt findings of fact and conclusions of law for this case, correct?
That is correct, Councilor Cassett. Thank you.
And as I'm looking at this, or I can't find it, but you did read that final action is considered either 35 days or when findings of fact or conclusion of law are adopted, correct? I'm trying to find it as well.
Thank you, Councilor Cassett. Do you mind if I read the quote from the code?
Please do. That's it. That's precisely what I would like.
Okay, thank you. And so if the body has, I quote, not adopted findings of fact and conclusions of law within 35 days of the date the vote deciding the matter was taken, then the final action shall be deemed to be such 35th day. And so the language there is shall. And so the code does not provide the option of a choice. There's not a choice to have it either be the date the findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted or 35 days after. The code provides that it is 35 days after if no findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted prior to that date.
So if that's the case, why did they go ahead and adopt finding of facts and conclusion of law 4 months later?
Thank you, Councilor Cassett. I'll do my best. Because I'm relatively new to the city attorney's office, I wasn't present for this hearing, and I don't know exactly why they weren't adopted until later. I did see on PrimeGov that the Board of Adjustment meetings prior to May 2nd were vacated. So the ones I believe in February, March, and April were not held. And so I believe that was the first Board of Adjustment meeting after this matter was voted upon.
Aaron, did you, city attorney?
Mayor Weber, councilors, I guess I would just want to avoid putting Assistant City Attorney Minnick Herman in a position of speculating as to other people's, why they did things. But it does sound like there are facts that are out there regarding the first opportunity this entity had.
Yeah, I was just more curious about the like legal process. If this does become a final action after 35 days, what is the, city's reasoning to move forward with finding the fact and conclusions of law at the next BOA meeting?
And Mayor Weber, councilors, I think that's important too. And I think it could depend on the situation. I think often those are written well in advance, even if the meeting doesn't happen. So it's entirely possible they were written earlier and the group wanted to document what the reasons for their decision were because they had already taken a vote. And I think it's helpful to staff to have findings of fact from prior cases and that type of thing too. So there could be many reasons why we would do that.
Okay. This might not be relevant. In the scenario that they had voted down the finding of facts and conclusions of law, would this still be a final action? Okay.
Mayor Weber, councilors, and what it might do is then staff maybe would prepare additional ones that did reflect the reasons why the vote happened.
Okay. I think those are all my questions for the moment. Thanks so much.
Counselor Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. McSherry, are findings of facts and conclusions of law required? You have to have them always?
Mayor or councilors, no. Because the action would have been final even if they weren't adopted, because of the code saying basically after a certain number of days. So if it were very important to a body, they'd want to have a special meeting if they didn't have one scheduled within that time period, if they really wanted to make sure that their findings of fact were documented.
So since there was then a final decision because it had 35 days had passed, they weren't under any obligation to adopt findings and conclusions, were they?
Mayor or councilor, I don't believe so, but it is helpful because there could be a situation, say 35 days passes, the 36th day happens, you vote on finding the fact and it's appealed the next day.
Okay, yeah, and I want to go back to Councilor Cassett's question because I don't think I quite understood your answer. So if they had voted down the findings and the conclusions, what happens then?
Mayor Weber, councilors, it would not change their original vote. It would just not adopt that reasoning that was documented in the findings of fact and conclusions of law. And they could ask for their reasoning to be better documented.
Okay,
For
so it's
example,
not,
there's two ways to get to a conclusion.
okay, so it's
Staff-
not changing the outcome of whatever the vote was. It's just how they supported the vote.
Mayor or councilor is correct, or
Okay.
maybe there was additional facts that were very important to a particular board that weren't reflected in findings of fact. So they might ask for those to be added. You
Okay,
could say like, oh, actually, the real reason I voted, and I'd really like this to be documented in finding of facts, is the testimony we had from X person.
right.
Maybe they want staff to reflect that fact, that testimony, the Board of Adjustment heard testimony from this person that attested to the conformity of,
Yeah.
the streetscape or whatever it might be in that case.
Okay, that's helpful because I thought maybe you could change the outcome and then that seems like chaos. So I'm glad to hear that you're just changing why you voted the way you did, but the vote for what you did stands. And this may be a question, and I'm sorry, this is the first time. The funny thing with names is I have to hear them and your voice is very quiet. So I'm going to try it. Ms. Manook, is that right?
Manook, yeah.
Manook Herman, yes? Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so I don't know if this is a question for you or Ms. McSherry. But again, I want to talk a little bit about why we have these rules. And you spoke a little bit about the public interest, and I think particularly in land use issues, people want to know when the final decision is because they start to take action based on whatever that decision is. And that's very important for the business or the resident or whoever it is who's counting on that decision. They may sign contracts to get work done. They may put money down. They may, I don't know, maybe more eloquently than I am doing from here, talk about why it's important that we adhere to our dates and deadlines and the rules that we've set out. You touched on that just a bit in your presentation, but maybe elaborate a little bit.
Thank you, Councilor Romero-Worth. The only thing that I would add is that I think that there is a value in consistently applying the rules so that everyone understands that the rules apply the same to everyone, including rules like the timelines for appeal. I think that it's important to know when an action becomes final. In this case, the action, there were no findings of fact and conclusions of law within 35 days. And so that is quite a long time for parties who might be waiting to take some kind of an action or to know if there's going to be some kind of further legal challenge to what they're trying to accomplish. And so after the 35 days, then there is a 15-day appeal period. And so there needs to be some kind of a deadline when we know that this is ended and then this is final, and what the parties are allowed to do. And so I hope that is helpful.
Right. And I guess, you focused on so you would know whether there's going to be, if you were the party who was before whatever board or governing body or public process, you would know whether you're whether you could move forward with your project or whether you might face further legal processes or challenges or whatever. But on the flip side, that final decision also helps you to know that you can either move forward with your project or not and start to maybe become contractually obligated or put down money or, I'm not saying these things very well, and I see that our land use director is here and maybe wants to add, but I don't know if that's, and I see the city attorney's hands up, so I'll just quiet my mic.
Mayor, councilors, I just wanted to correct something I said earlier. When I was saying there's not a requirement for findings of fact, there's not an external one in law. There is one in the city's code. So in terms of like, are we required to have the requirement? No. Would a district court say you had to do this? They would potentially take note of our law. So we are required to do it. And they are supposed to be adopted by each of the boards. And that might be why Director Klug came up. It is this. I'm not sure it's appropriate for Director Klug to answer questions.
Want to answer that particular question? I can answer it if you'd like me to.
Which I'm sorry, I was looking up this because I realized I probably had misspoke on the, I'm not sure what the question was.
Well, I'm just trying to explore a little bit this idea of why it's important that fairness, why we follow the rules, why the rules are there and why we want to, make sure that we follow the process the same every single time so that we treat everybody fairly. But I think it's also on the flip side, if you're the person who's bringing a project, you want to know you want to know when the final decision is so you can move ahead with your project, or maybe you don't get to move ahead with your project.
Mayor, Councilor, I would like this to remain a recommendation from the city attorney's office because that is how our code reads.
Okay, that's fine. I think I've made my point. It's all right. But let's go back to the point, if I can, Mayor, that you just made, Ms. McSherry, about, so under our code, while we do need to have findings of fact and conclusions of law at some point, we have two options in our code for when there's a final decision. It's either when the findings and facts and conclusions of law have been adopted or when 35 days has run. And in this instance, the findings and fact and conclusions of law came after the 35 days had run, but it's not, you don't need to have what am I trying to say here? 35 days to run is a final decision.
Mayor, Councilor, I think that or recognizes that sometimes you will not adopt findings of fact and conclusions of law before 35 days. So the code recognizes that. I think it's saying like, even if
Right.
staff is behind, even if a commission decides not to meet regularly during the period that your case has already been decided, you can know that after 35 days, an appeal is not in accordance with the city's rules.
Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify. Thank you, Mayor. That's all.
You're welcome. Counselor Garcia, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the same question clarified.
All good. Counselor Lindell, you have the floor.
Thank you. The question I have is, I understand what we're being asked to vote on tonight. What would be the, I'm bothered by the case itself. I know that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the timely filing of an appeal. Is there a pathway at this point in time to challenge the decision that was made by the board?
Mayor Weber, councilors, I have not done that research. And that's not something that we've given a recommendation about tonight.
Okay, I mean, that's a good answer. Ms. McSherry, I appreciate that. However, I'm bothered by this case. So I'll yield the floor, Mayor.
Counselor Michael Garcia, sir, I see your hand is up on the screen. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues for their questions earlier. I did have some of the same questions.
Need you to be a little louder, sir.
Sorry about that. Am I coming in loud and clear? Is that better now?
A little better. If you can get closer to the mic, it's good. Thanks.
Sure. So there is a question in our public comment feedback that I guess I'll work to get addressed. And so there's a statement that reads, the council is required by law to approve the H Board's denial of the design of the Lucci sign. That denial occurred in April 2023.
Hang on a second, Counselor. We got a telephone going off in the council chambers. Is distracting. Okay, we're quieted now. If you can you start back up with where you were because it got drowned out.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
And so I'm just going to refer to public comments submitted. And it states that the council is required by law to approve the H Board's denial of the design of the Lucci sign. That denial occurred in April 2023 and has never come to the council, even though the case of 220 Rodriguez did. Same facts, denial of an exception for design. So the question is, why is this case treated differently? So can staff clarify that, please?
And Councilor Garcia, may I have just a moment to pull up the public comment so I can get on the same page as you?
Sure.
Thank you.
City Attorney.
Yeah. Mayor Weber, councilors, I believe the exception issue was from the HRB board. Is that accurate? The Rodriguez case? So we're talking about an appeal of an H board case versus an appeal of a Board of Adjustment decision. And Mayor Weber, one is not an appeal, one is a recommendation. The H board exception rule requires the governing body to make the final or the decision, and that's appealable to district court. That's the exceptions issue we've been dealing with, where H board doesn't have the ability to make a decision about exceptions. They make recommendations, whereas the Board of Adjustment was making a decision.
Were you going to do look any more deeply into what that public comment was, or did the city attorney just address the question?
I'm unable to pull up the rest of the public comment at this time, but I don't have anything else to add.
Councilor Garcia, were you able to hear what the city attorney said?
Yes, I was. Thank you. I just wanted to provide clarification for public consumption. So I guess my next question revolves around, it seems from Councilor Lindell's question that there potentially might be another option that allows for an appeal process, but the city attorney office hasn't explored that yet. And so with that being said, I would suggest we postpone decision on this until the city attorney's office can come back with, after doing further investigation, and allow for us to have a more holistic vantage point in regards to is this the only process point, or is there another option that potentially could be available to us? So given that there might be another option, like I said, I would recommend we postpone the decision on this until we could get further clarification from the city attorney's office. With that, no other comments or questions, Mr. Mayor.
City attorney has her hand up, I think, to respond to your suggestion.
Mayor Weber, councilors, I'd like to put my earlier comment in context. So I heard, is there any other way to challenge this decision? I do not advise challengers of city actors as to all their possible legal actions. I'm not really sure that's the type of question. It's just really not the type of thing you'd put on an agenda in the future, is how might people attack a Board of Adjustment decision. So I don't recommend it's not really relevant to this appeal, which is this appeal in conformance with the city rules? That's really the only question we're facing tonight. And any question about would another appeal or would another challenge of some sort to the city action that occurred by the Board of Adjustment would that be valid? Doesn't address whether this appeal conforms with the city rules, which is the only question we're facing tonight.
Other questions or comments about this case? I think, Madam City Attorney, can I get you to expand on that a little bit? If I understand correctly, what you're saying is that while Councilor Lindell has a concern about the substance of the matter, that's number one, not in front of us, and number two, ordinarily wouldn't be something the city attorney would research in order to provide advice to the appellant.
And Mayor or councilors, I guess I didn't interpret it as necessarily being from an appellant perspective, but perhaps if the governing body didn't like it, is there anything you could do? I don't know if that was part of the question. And I have not researched that. And I also do not advise the public on how to challenge public decisions. So both of those things. But they both would not address this question, which is whether this appeal conformed with the
Was it timely
requirements,
or
right?
not?
Right.
Which is in front of us tonight. Other comments or questions about the case that's in front of us tonight? Yeah, Councilor Cassett, go ahead, you have the floor.
So the other thing that I'm noticing is that final action was 35 days after, but even if the final action was on if considered May 2nd, the request still did not come in within those 15 days, if I'm doing my calculation correctly. Because it's once the payment is made, so it's May 21st.
Can we not do that? I'm sorry, you're out of order and you're not supposed to participate. You're out of order. You're out of order. Please stop this right now. Because this is not a public hearing. I'm sorry, you're out of order. You just have to abide by the rules here where we don't have we do not have a public, ma'am, we do not have a public hearing going on and you're out of order. You're out of order. Now, the question was asked of the city attorney's office, so it's the city attorney's office job to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm just going to the section in the code.
Mayor or councilors, on one point in terms of the appeal fee, chapter 14-3.17 appeals D, process to file an appeal, part 3 says an appeal fee shall be paid at the time of filing an appeal.
Thank you.
No. Please sit down and please stop talking. You are out of order. I appreciate you're out of order. I am very sorry. I'm sorry, but you're out of order. This is not a public hearing. You're out of order. We're following our rules for this matter. You are out of order. Ma'am, you're out of order. Please abide by the rules. No. I'm sorry, you're out of order. I'm not going to keep saying it. You're out of order. Please don't speak. This is a conversation between the governing body and the city attorney's office. I'm sorry, you're out of order. You've got to stop. I really am asking you, please stop, please.
And Councilor Cassett, if I may address your question, it looks like May 18th would have been just 15 days after May 2nd. However, I would respectfully submit that it's essentially irrelevant whether the.
Yeah, I apologize. This is me trying to understand the law. I will have these more offline conversations, just so I'm understanding this process the best that I can. And then in terms of if there's not a meeting, do we have any We don't really have any way that this goes public on, I mean, just because the agendas are there. And so that's essentially where it's available to the public, is you can look at the agendas, look at the cases, how would somebody know that this had been approved from the public perspective if they weren't at the meeting?
Mayor Weber, counselors, the recordings are available.
Okay.
And I believe, the appellant participated in the hearing. I actually don't have personal knowledge of that. Is that accurate?
I don't have personal
Okay.
knowledge of that.
Okay.
However, in the public comments that were submitted, I know that was not something that was.
No. You may not participate in this meeting. You're out of order. I'm asking you, please stop. You really can't pop up and contribute. You're out of order. Please stop. I'm asking you. You're out of order. Stop, please. I'm sorry. Could you repeat what you were saying?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just saying that when I was reviewing the public comments earlier, there was no issue raised about the appellant's inability or lack of presence at the Board of Adjustment meeting. And so my understanding is that she was present. It appears she had knowledge of it when she drafted the appeal.
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking for the general rule. If this happens when, just want to make sure that there's a way that the public would know that at this meeting, this occurred if they were not there. So that there was a recording or there were minutes or there was something that indicated to the public that they would know that that 35-day clock had started.
Mayor Weber, counselors, my understanding is we are recording all of those hearings right now. There, I believe, and I'll find the language on this about, draft minutes being available within a certain period of time.
Okay.
But they typically would be. But certainly the recording and the original notice of the hearing is public, and generally there's a decision made during that meeting. I think that would be a good assumption for the public, is if the case is on a meeting, there may have been a decision. Therefore, 35 days from that public hearing could be the deadline.
Right. Yeah, I was just as, they may assume that there's a decision, but if there's no way that they would know which way the decision went. So I do believe that most of our land use boards are on YouTube right now, but I just wanted to confirm that that was the case, that there was the ability that it was posted to the public, that there was that there was a 35 days. Or not.
Mayor, we'd have to check on that in particular. I'm not sure on that one.
Okay, good to know. Board of Adjustment's not, okay.
Mayor, counselors, the question can be asked. I don't know if it was in this case. Most of them are recorded and available. Most land use board
Okay,
hearings are. I'm not sure. The Board of Adjustment, it sounds like, is not.
okay, but it was a recording somewhere that could have been viewed. No?
Yeah.
Nothing? That is my only question at this time. Thank you.
Councilor Rivera, you have the floor, sir.
Madam City Attorney, had the appeal been filed in a timely manner within the 15 days, what would have been the process after that?
My understanding is that then we would have an appeal in front of the governing body. Is that correct, Ms. Sherry?
Mayor, I'm sorry. I believe that's correct. Yeah. So,
And go ahead. were you
no,
done?
that's it.
Okay, so in that process, when it comes back to the governing body, would it have been a public hearing at that time? And would the appellant have had opportunity to share comments or discuss their side of it with the governing body?
Mayor, counselors, yes.
Okay, so really, since the appeal was not filed in a timely manner, the appellant, we're not really discussing that. We're just discussing the timeliness of the appeal.
Mayor, counselors, that's correct. But let's confirm can we confirm the Board of Adjustment appeal would go here and not to the Planning Commission?
Either way, it would have gone to somebody else and would have continued through some process.
Mayor, Counselor Rivera, that's correct. And that's when there would be a public hearing with sworn testimony and all of that. Yes.
Making sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification. So if the meeting isn't recorded and on our YouTube page, if someone were to want to know about that meeting, say they weren't there physically, they could request meeting notes from the city clerk for that, for a particular meeting.
Mayor Borough Council, that's correct. They just wouldn't be voted upon at that point in this circumstance, since the next meeting, adopted them.
Right.
They wouldn't be final.
But you could get meeting notes from that meeting.
Mayor Borough Councilor Villarreal, that should be the case. We did not do a trial run this time and make sure we were able to get them and everything else, but I'm not aware of anyone attempting to get them and not being able to for some reason, but that should be the case, yes.
And how quickly are the meeting notes available?
Mayor Borough Councilor Villarreal, it depends. So
Sorry, not meeting notes, meeting minutes.
Mayor Borough Councilors, it just depends when they're submitted to the staff who's working with the committee usually.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Rivera.
Just to follow up on that, did we say the Board of Adjustment, they are on YouTube? They're not on YouTube.
Mayor Borough Councilor, I have not watched them on YouTube myself. The clerk's telling me no, but I would like to discourage if there's different procedures people want for this type of situation, we can absolutely adopt those procedures. Right now, there's nothing about if there was a recording, then 35 days is okay. If there wasn't, it wasn't. If there were written minutes that the person reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of considerations that I think are potentially good things to think about. They are not the criteria we looked at in this case to prepare those facts or arguments for the governing body. So I feel a little bit unprepared to tell you when the minutes were ready in this case. I'm not aware of the appellant asking for them. That's not something we looked at. It's not one of the criteria, so it's not something we knew to look for. But I do feel like you're raising a lot of issues that you might want to look at in terms of whether there is enough information out there to the level you would like it to be or not. But then I think you also want to look at the public policy interests that have been also considered here of finality of decisions and when someone brings an application to the city and they want to know whether that they can move forward on something or not. So I think those are all important considerations. In this case, there wasn't a requirement to check when the minutes were available or if there was recording and that kind of thing. So those aren't that's not the type of information that was gathered for this recommendation.
My questions are just basic. So the city clerk said that the meetings are not recorded. Do they have a stenographer?
Mayor councilors, they do, and they are required to take minutes
Thank you.
for open meetings.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So if somebody from the city attorney's office can help bring us back to, I think the question in front of us is very narrow. What is that question?
Councilor Romero, if I can address that question, the question is whether or not the appeal was in conformity with the procedural rules for land use appeals. And the sub question is whether the appeal was filed within 15 days of the date of final action.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Councilor Michael Garcia, sir, your hand is up. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, quick question and clarification because.
Little louder though, please.
Sorry, I'll get a little closer to.
Thank you.
laptop. In the memo, it states that on May 22nd, 2023, Ms. Benenato submitted an appeal petition. But when you look at the record, that's part of the packet, it's time-stamped May 18th, 2022, which is a big difference in dates. And I believe it was Councilor Cassett who was asking about questions, and a staff member from the city attorney's office said that was within the 15 days or right on the 15-day mark. So can I get clarification on that?
Yes, Counselor Garcia, thank you. If I may answer that question. So what I was saying is that the May 18th would be, it looks like 15 days of May 2nd. And I didn't have time to do the math. I'm just looking at the calendar on my computer right now, but it looks like that would have been 15 days of May 2nd, which is when the findings of fact and conclusions of law were adopted by the Board of Adjustment. However, the date on which the findings of fact and conclusions of law were adopted in this situation is immaterial because they were adopted later than 35 days of the date on which the vote was held. And so the code is clear that if the findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted later than 35 days of the date of the vote, then the date of final action is that 35th day. And so that is why the 35 days, so that is why the appeal was untimely. There's not really an option to decide to make the date of final action May 2nd. The date of final action was 35 days after January 3rd.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So then in the memo, the conclusion reads, the CAO recommends that the governing body deny the appeal without a public hearing because the appellant failed to meet the legal requirement of filing the appeal within 15 days of the final action. So the conclusion you just gave me is differing from the conclusion in the memo. And I think it was confirmed that the appeal was filed within 15 days. So I'm a bit confused because the 15-day mark was met, but yet the conclusion or recommendation of denial is not the same as provided in the memo. So I'm a bit confused in regards to why the, I guess, the irrelevance of the 15-day mark was not the conclusion in the memo, and because it's beyond the 35-day mark, it's irrelevant. So I guess I'm just confused at that because it seems like we're arguing one point in the memo, and now we're arguing a different point here in this discussion. So how can it be both ways?
Go ahead.
Garcia, may I address that question?
Go ahead.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Counselor Garcia. And I do apologize if the way I stated it was confusing. So the vote was held on January 3rd. So 35 days after January 3rd would have been February 7th. The findings of fact and conclusions of law were not adopted within that 35-day window. So then the date of final action, regardless of whether findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted before February 7th, becomes February 7th. Thereafter, from February 7th, the appellant has 15 days within which to file her appeal. Her appeal was not filed within 15 days of February 7th. And so at that time, the time to file an appeal expired.
So I guess my follow-up question is, because they then went back to reapprove the findings of fact, does that restart the clock, so to speak? That because now they've taken action and now you have to there's another opportunity, an additional opportunity within 15 days for folks to file an appeal. So I guess that's my question, because I think that it's been established that 15-day mark has been met for when the findings of fact was passed by the body. Now, I guess my question is, does that restart the clock in regards to the appeal process? If somebody being afforded the opportunity to file an appeal of the findings of fact, and if not, why? What is our justification for not allowing that? Because an action was taken, and there should be some opportunity for a member of the public to appeal the action taken, or else I guess I'm just confused by that. So if the clock doesn't start again, then can we justify why that clock and appeal process does not start again?
You all did this a little bit earlier, but maybe you can go back over the ground of the 35 days from the vote versus the findings of fact, because I think that's what the counselor's addressing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Counselor Garcia. I suppose just to clarify, no, the time to file the appeal does not restart when findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted. The time to file the appeal expires 35 days from the date of the vote, regardless of whether findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted within that time. There's no new time to file an appeal that opens up when those findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted. As to the policy reasons for having a date, for having this date, this 35-day deadline, or this 35-day date of final action after the vote is held, as opposed to waiting until the findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted. What we discussed earlier was that essentially there may be reasons why a board such as the Board of Adjustment may not be able to meet to formally adopt the findings within that 35-day window. And people who are involved in these cases, particularly in land use cases, have some interest in finality, so that they, it may be a financial interest. It may be that other people are relying on them to take some kind of an action. And they need to be able to know when a decision by a land use board becomes final. And typically we consider, a decision to be final when that appeal period has run. Then we know that there's no other challenges to that decision by the body. Does that answer your question, Counselor Garcia?
It does, and I definitely understand the whole 35-day rule. But I guess what concerns me here is appropriate due process, in the sense that if somebody wanted to appeal a decision, an appropriate way to appeal a decision would be to utilize findings of facts as the justification for why that decision was made. And in this instance, there wasn't those grounds of findings of fact. And so with that being said, when the body then began to take action on the findings of fact, that ultimately kind of leads for the due process to continue, for somebody to either appeal or support the findings of fact. And I think that is what's concerning here, is that if we have this process where no action is taken after 35 days, it doesn't afford the public proper due process opportunity to appeal a process or support it, given the lack of findings of fact. And I think that's where, I think it was mentioned earlier, we can begin to look at that process. But I guess I would like to see where in our code, policies, laws, whatever it may be, that states that when a findings of fact is adopted, that it doesn't allow for somebody to appeal the process. And I think that's the concern here, is that the body, I have no idea why they didn't meet. And until we have that justification from the body why they didn't meet, it can just kind of wait the clock out. Something's adopted, doesn't afford the public the opportunity to support or appeal a process due to the lack of findings of fact. And then when something is presented, it doesn't matter anyway, because it's already been approved. And so I think that's very concerning here. So do we have anything that clearly demonstrates or states that when the findings of fact is adopted after the 35-day process, it's irrelevant? Because I think that's the logic we're using right now. And I believe that when the findings of fact is adopted, there still is an opportunity to appeal that, whether or not the 35-day adopted it or not, because I think that clock does restart. And until there is something that says it doesn't, I think we should afford the public the opportunity to take that findings of fact and justification as an argument, and we're not allowing the public for that. So I appreciate the clarification provided by staff. At this moment, don't have any other questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I think the city attorney has an answer for the question you were raising about the policy of 35 days as the final action and the clock not restarting. But I turn the floor over to her.
Mayor Rober, Councilor Garcia, councilors. So section 14-3.17, which is about appeals in the land use code. Part C, subpart 4, date of final action. There's 2 subparts to that. The date of final action shall be deemed to be the date of the final written decision and determined as follows. And then this is part B for final actions of a land use board, the governing body. Part A is about final actions of the land use director. So under part B, it's the date the body adopts a written decision containing the findings of fact and conclusions of law. Provided that if such body has not adopted findings of fact and conclusions of law within 35 days of the date the vote deciding the matter was taken, then the date of final action shall be deemed to be such 35th day.
Mr.
So
Mayor, may I?
the code
respond?
stipulates what is considered the final action. If there are not yet findings of fact, that's the code statement. Other questions? Councilor Romero Worth.
I understand the problem with wanting findings of facts and conclusions of law to be able to make an appeal. But certainly the record from the meeting would also give you some understanding of what the board was thinking about when they made the decision, and you could appeal based on meeting minutes and what happened at the meeting itself, correct?
That is correct.
And I guess, again, going back to why you might have, so there's 2 paths here. You either have 15 days from the date that findings of fact and conclusions of law were made, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Or you have the 35th day from the vote of the board. And I would think that would, if you didn't have that rule, we might, city attorney's waving at me.
Mayor Rober, or 15 days from the 35th day. So it's 15 days from either of those dates?
Right, right. But I'm just in terms of like where the finish line is, right? It's either, it's
So it'd be 50 days after the hearing or 15 days after findings of fact.
right. But you would want, I'm just trying to think why you would want to have that other option, that 35-day option. So let's say, maybe we could be in a situation where the Board of Adjustment had not, to this day, done findings of fact and conclusions of law yet. And, that leaves parties in limbo, right? So you sort of want that second option so that you get a final decision in 2 ways. I don't know. Do you want to comment on that? The underlying policy of why it would be a good idea to have 2 different ways of getting to a final decision and knowing when the appeal would be 15 days from either one of those benchmarks?
Councilor Romero Worth, it is what's in the code. And so presumably when that section of the code was created, that was determined to be what was in the best interest of the public, and doing business. And so I would presume that it would give boards the flexibility, such as what happened in this, as is what happened in this case, to potentially not meet for a few months for whatever reason and adopt findings of fact at a later date, but still allow parties and other interested members of the public that finality, that ability to know when the action becomes final.
Right. And so, I mean, we do have the power in the future to revisit this law and make different choices. So if we think that having findings of fact and conclusions of law are necessary to being able to appeal, and we think that is something that the record of the meeting itself is not enough, we can make a change to the law for future cases, that we handle this differently. But right today, we have this law in front of us.
Councilor Romero Worth, absolutely. The law could be changed at a future date if it's decided that that is what needs to happen, but
Right.
we've recited the law that's in front of us.
Right. And so maybe this case raises issues which we want to address in a different way in the future. But tonight, back to this, what's in front of us is very narrow decision based on the law that we have right now, correct?
Thank you, Councilor Romero Worth. Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Yeah, I think you've said it succinctly. We have obviously some discomfort from different members of the governing body about what might be done differently. And we have the question raised by Councilor Garcia, why the clock doesn't start again, but the code is very clear that the clock doesn't start again. It's not contingent upon the filing of findings of fact. It just isn't. It says specifically, if there aren't findings of fact, that the clock is dictated by the vote, and that is the terms for filing an appeal. And we don't get to change that rule right now arbitrarily as a matter of interpretation, because code says what the code says. It may be a source of discomfort, and I appreciate that. And it may raise issues for change, but it isn't within our purview to unilaterally tonight issue a reinterpretation of the code. Councilor Rivera and then Councilor Cassett.
I wanted to make a motion. Based on the facts in front of us this evening, I move to accept the recommendation of the city attorney's office on the conformity of the appellant's appeal.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Councilor Cassett, you had your hand up. Did you want to discuss this further?
I also was going to make a motion, but I do really appreciate the conversation tonight. I think that this was hard, and it really did bring to light some things that we have the power to look at. But to everybody's point, this is the law as it stands right now. And that's what we follow. So thank you.
Other questions or comments from the governing body? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on the motion?
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Abstain.
Councilor Lindell, Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Cassett,
Yes.
Councilor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
thank you. Madam Clerk, can you take us to the next item, please?
Yes, Mayor, the next item on the agenda is matters from the city manager.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Hope you're all doing well. A litany of things to sort of walk you all through tonight, pretty quickly. One We'll start with, since we last met on June 15th, we had a what was ultimately a very productive 3-hour RECC meeting talking about next steps and where we're headed. The meeting was tough at moments, trying to work out some necessity for urgency of getting some things done. Ultimately, we were able to get an agreement from Motorola with our partners that we believe that all of the public radio system will be switched over to the state system. All the radios will be switched over as well by the middle of August to give us a 2-week window before Zozobra and Fiestas, which, as you all know, is a big night for our first responders, and that it was imperative that this work get done prior to that time. So I'm grateful for Chief Moya and Chief Joy for their cooperation and the rest of the team and really pushing as hard as we could to make sure that we got this across the finish line, and we'll keep pushing. Hopefully we'll have some results for you here in a few weeks. Want to speak briefly about, we had a very successful auction a week ago, I guess it would have been about a week and a half. Some $700,000 worth of vehicles were sold. I wasn't able to attend, but as I do understand, we believe that between the people who are present and those online, we sold everything that we were auctioning off. And I think there's actually a sense now that it's been a number of years since the city's done an auction, that this is great. Let's go find other things that we're not using that we can sell, others can use, and we can repurpose that money. So we'll have a lot more coming in that regard. Want to flag a great couple of weekends of events here at the city, both Juneteenth and all the events that came around the Pride celebration and the work that the city government's been doing around Pride. Major activities at our libraries, displays. The Pride Parade was really an extraordinary time. It was, not everybody liked the t-shirts, some elected officials, but to see, I'm pointing to Councilor Lindell, but to see what I think was about 50 or 60 city employees in the same t-shirts, a fire truck, a police truck, waste management, emergency services, all of our librarians. It just was such an exciting presence to see the city's involvement in that. And even after the fact, we had 2 booths as part of the Pride presentation on the plaza. Police department was taking care of one, we're talking to constituents, and our library took the second booth. And it was so cool. We had a drag queen story hour, and it was really moving to see the drag queen Brandy reading the story to these kids, and the kids just being so enraptured in the book and this extraordinary person that was reading it to them. So it really is a testament to the city. Huge thanks to Alex Matas, Casey Dalbor, everyone in our fire police department, our libraries. It really was a team effort. And, I think I might have mentioned previously, clearly our queer employees are very focused on making sure we celebrate Pride, but we've sort of realized there's a real opportunity for the city as a whole to grow to ensure that we're also celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, Black History Month, et cetera. And so we're going to be working in the coming years to make sure that we're providing those opportunities to celebrate the great diversity of our city staff. I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple of things related to Pride, one of which is, I think you're all aware now that we've had 2 instances of vandalism on the sort of faux Pride flag that we put on the plaza for the last week and a half. We learned about one on Monday night, which is where someone had drawn a cross with the word Jesus Saves across the Pride flag. That next morning, we learned that there actually had been an incident the week before where city staff, working to be as kind as possible, cleaned it up as quickly as they could because they didn't want anyone to see it or to be offended by it. I'm not able to repeat here what those words said. It was more offensive than what was found with the Jesus Saves. But we put out a press statement from Kevin Bowen, who runs the HRA, Marshall Martinez, who runs EQ&M, the mayor, Councilor Lindell. And I wanted to sort of flag, it's been interesting to see that some sort of suggesting that Jesus Saves in that being done in that way isn't homophobic. And I just want to sort of flag, in the Pride Parade and in the booths after, there were a number of religious organizations in Santa Fe that were participating, that are and continue to be through their fellowship engaged with the queer community in Santa Fe. And that's one of the wonderful things about Santa Fe, is this ability to coexist and to be queer and to be religious. And so through some of the comments I've seen on the internet in relationship to some of the news coverage, was this notion that Jesus Saves being placed on a Pride flag isn't potentially homophobic. And what I would say is, it's one thing if there were religious leaders on the plaza celebrating with us, but whoever did this, the flag did it in the dark of night undercover. And that's not intended to be loving or welcoming or in communion with the community. And so we're hopeful that we will not see this happen again. But it is a reminder that even in as progressive a state as New Mexico and as progressive as a city as Santa Fe, there are still people who are not welcoming to the queer community. Want to flag a couple of progress reports. We're making good progress both on West Alameda. Director Wheeler isn't here tonight. I don't have an actual update of what we're doing, but we know that we're making full steam ahead. I know that we keep hearing at the city about people asking when it's going to be done. I'm sure you all do as well as counselors. And so we're going to keep working to try to figure out if we can't get you a every other week update so that you can be in a position of knowledge to talk to your constituents about what's happening with the road. Was actually out at the airport this morning doing a tour with Director Harris. The baggage claim is up and running. The glass doors from the terminal out are working. There's significant progress in the parking lot outside. There's a new solar array that's up and running. Pardon me, or at least it's up anyway. The new sidewalk connecting the airport to both the short-term parking, the exterior parking is in place. And so there's things that are still moving. We're on track still, I think, for late August for an opening of the terminal and in October of the parking lot. But we are building, we're digging, we're patching, we're fixing, and we're getting there. We'll flag that over the last 3-4 weeks or so, the mayor and I have had a number of meetings with some tribal leaders within the region, both with Chairman Mitchell from the All Pueblo Council of Governors. We've met with the Tesuque leadership. We've met actually with the Cochiti leadership about a week ago. It was suggested to us that was the first time that a mayor of Santa Fe had sat down with the Cochiti leadership, which was sort of striking to me that that's true. But sort of, I think the reason I'm raising it for you is just to acknowledge that I think we're working towards a place where we're working more collaboratively with the tribes in the region to make sure that their interests and their priorities for their own tribes are being taken into some account as the city does its business and as we do work around the city. And I think that's a really exciting thing. I love that. Want to give big thanks to Chief Moya, Director Ochoa, and everyone at the fire department for the launching of Zozo 1, the new fire truck at Fire Station 1. We had a great ceremony there last Friday. It was really exciting. Had a great number of students from Girls Inc. who were there. It's again a nice chance to sort of get together and celebrate. The truck is still powered by gas to be driven, but every other device on the truck is no longer powered by gas, which is a big deal. And so they've been able to figure out how to modify the truck so that anything that could be sort of potentially cancer causing for the firefighters is separated from where they sit and where they spend time. Things are now battery operated that are rechargeable. And so it is a step towards sustainability for our fire department, but that was very cool as well. And lastly, we'll flag for you again, just as a reminder, we're closed on July 4th. We are open on the 3rd, and we anticipate that a decent number of staff will likely take that day off to have a 4-day weekend. We've done a lot of work with our department directors to make sure that particularly those that are public facing, that they have anticipated that there will still be people who need to be opening doors, taking calls, responding to residents. And so we expect it'll be a quiet day, but they'll be there nonetheless. So, Mr. Mayor, that's it for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilor Mayor. Yes, Councilor Mayor Warren.
I'd like to make a motion that we go to petitions from the floor since it's 10 of 7.
What if we waited 10 minutes by going around the
Okay. Okay.
and go to petitions from the floor?
And then go to our then pick it back up with matters from the
Yes,
city attorney's office.
if that's okay with you.
That's fine. I just thought,
There's a motion.
otherwise it's a long time before we get to petitions from the floor and it is almost 7.
Right. I think if we go to our communications from the governing body and then from there go to petitions from the floor, will be pretty close to 7, and that'll work for everybody. If that's all right, can you make that motion and we'll vote on it?
So moved.
There's a second? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on changing our agenda so that we go first to communications from the governing body and then petitions to the floor before going back to the city attorney?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Lindell? Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Millworth?
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal?
Yes.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
Thank you, everyone. So let's just quickly go to communications from the governing body, and Councillor Lee Garcia, I will start with you, sir, and we'll just go down the line, and we will not forget that we have a esteemed member of the governing body zooming in. So we'll go to Councillor Michael Garcia will be our wrap up, our cleanup hitter.
Thank you, Mayor. Not much tonight, just wishing Councilor Rivera and his wife a happy anniversary. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I also do not have much, but I did want to, as City Manager Blair discussed Pride, which was just a really wonderful event, and it really was very encouraging to see so many members of the city staff come out to celebrate, and really quite a sight. And I always really enjoy spending some time with Councilor Lindell during Pride Parade. I always come and find her, especially when we turn around to the plaza, because I know it's just such a wonderful moment, and it's just her joy is just infectious. So thank you again for that. I did also want to thank two members of our fire department, Miguel Rivas and Andres Rivera. They were driving the old-fashioned fire truck, and they let my tiny human sit there and ring the bell and took care of him. And so I really appreciated that, because despite the fact that he had a blank look on his face, he's definitely been talking about it all week. So he really did enjoy that. So I wanted to thank them. I entrusted my most precious possession in their hands, and they did a great job watching out for him. I did also want to mention that we had our final, Councilor Chavez and I spoke about our Culture Connects project, and we did have our final District 4 community celebration meeting conversations. And we did some art and made this really beautiful, almost like quilt of paintings that I'll be talking to Director Sanchez Tucker about putting up somewhere. So I will let you all know where that will be, and invite you all to come see it, because it really is beautiful, and just such a celebration of our community and our district. And I believe that's all I have tonight. Thank you so much. Oh, happy 4th of July, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to echo the energy at the Pride Parade was fantastic. Really happy to participate in that. And also the energy at the pushback for the new fire truck was very fun. And the Zozobra symbols, the Zobra markings on the fire truck itself, very fun. So I look forward to seeing that truck around in the city. That's a pretty cool thing. I would wish everybody happy 4th of July. I wish Councilwoman Villarreal happy birthday, turning 20 again. And Councilor Rivera, happy anniversary. Very, very fun, big milestone. Peter and I hit that one 3 years ago, so we're a little bit ahead of you. Anyway, that's all I have tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lindell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Pride was terrific this year. Coming around that corner onto the plaza, it makes me cry every year. And I have to address the vandalism that happened on the plaza. You know, the article in the newspaper, and then I read the comments. We have so much work to do, folks. The way that people have no understanding of what that means, what it feels like, how dismissive it is, telling us that we don't belong. It's extremely painful, and it's extremely wrong. We're not going away, and we're not going to put up with it. So the comments just dumbfound me of how the point is missed. That, oh, it's just graffiti on the ground anyway. On a happier note, congratulations, Chris and Angela. That's terrific. Happy birthday to Counselor Villarreal. And 4th of July. What an important holiday. Happy to be alive, happy to be living in this country. And 4th of July also is 27 years that Maria Sanchez has put up with me. 27 years, it's a lot of days. And she supported my dream so many times, so kindly. And one thing that no one would argue, I mean, you can argue with me about a lot of things, but one argument you will not win is that I have been extremely lucky at love. So happy anniversary, Maria. Thank you for putting up with me and sharing my dream with me. And always, when it isn't your dream, still being willing to be the wind beneath my wings. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And now the birthday. Councilwoman has the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. What beautiful words, Councilor Lindell, to say that about partnership and love and, just appreciate my colleagues sharing those sentiments and just, yeah, all of you are really lucky to have that kind of partnership with people that may not always agree and probably get very frustrated when you don't do the dishes. But I'm looking at Council Rivera, but I think it's just a sentiment or a testament to just how just community, people working on relationships. And we do that too on the council, working on relationship with our constituents and our families and friends. So I just appreciate all of you for that. And so happy anniversary, and happy that Angela has put up with you for that long. And also happy anniversary to Councilor Linda Maria to have that bond for so long. And just very thankful for the celebrations that we have in our community that lift up diversity and the various, histories and people that we want to feel, and that I hope that they feel that they belong in our community. I've been doing some traveling with my other job and seeing other communities that are not that fortunate to have the kind of community activities, the community events, the camaraderie, the spaces to feel safe. And so I'm really appreciative of Santa Fe. We're not perfect and we still have a lot of work to do, but Santa Fe is a wonderful place to live. Just wanted to acknowledge I guess you'd call my father-in-law, Joe Snoy. We celebrated a milestone birthday for him, 80 years this weekend in Colorado, and just his legacy, the love he brings and care and generosity, and just really appreciate Joseph Snoy. So just wanted to put a shout out to that. And I will just thank you all for my birthday wishes, and 21 will feel good again. So if you want to celebrate, let me know. I'll be off next week. Thank you.
Congratulations. And now our other anniversary person.
Thank you, Mayor. Did my wife call you before? I want to wish my beautiful bride Angela a happy anniversary, 30 years Monday. So, yeah, I think she did talk to Councilwoman Villarreal because he does put up with a lot. So, happy anniversary to Council Lindell and Maria. You guys mean a lot to us, so we appreciate you. Happy birthday to Councilwoman Villarreal. Whatever age you want to be is fine with me. I also wanted to thank Councilor Lee Garcia for covering Public Works on Monday while we were celebrating our anniversary. And just to let everyone know, I'll be at the NALEO conference the week of the 10th. Should be pretty exciting. And then just want to wish everyone a happy and safe Fourth. Remember, we had a lot of moisture, so all the weeds and everything got nice and big. Now we haven't had any moisture, so everything's drying out. So the potential is there. So please be safe if you can attend the main fireworks show. That's what we always recommend. They do everything safe and fire department is present. So that would be my recommendation to everyone. And then just wanted to ask the city manager if we could maybe get weekly updates from Director Dozier on the effluent status. We received a report at a public works meeting, then haven't heard. So it just to keep us all fresh about what's happening there. And then also, if we can get an update from Director McDonald about what's going on at Marty Sanchez. I've had some comments that they're closed right now and I haven't heard anything about it. So if we can get a status from her, what's going on there. I think that's it for me. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Counselor. And Counselor Michael Garcia, zooming in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy birthday, Councilwoman Villarreal. Happy anniversary to Councilor Rivera and Councilor Lindell. Speaking of anniversaries, actually mine and my wife's anniversary tomorrow as well. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary, but sometimes it feels like it's its 30th as Councilor Rivera is celebrating. So just want to give a big shout out to my wife for putting up with me for, at least these 5+ years. And as well, big birthday to her. It's her birthday on Sunday. So happy birthday to her. And, happy 247th birthday to good old America. 4th of July. I wish everybody a happy and safe 4th of July as you're celebrating. Please be safe and please be aware that folks' pets don't agree with fireworks all the time. So if we can just take that into consideration as we're celebrating and just wish everybody a great next week. I know there's going to be a lot of celebrations going on. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor, and added celebrations to you and your family. That we've got a lot of that going on this group. Congratulations to everybody. Very exciting. Birthdays, anniversaries, more birthdays, national birthdays. Go ahead. Yes, sir. Counselor Garcia. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I did forget to mention Pancakes on the Plaza. And so that's a great, huge event that goes on every year. The Rotary Club does a great job with it, and I'll be down there flipping pancakes. So thank you.
Yep, you stole my first item. There will be pancakes flipped for everyone. Tickets are on sale, $12 each, or a family pack of 4 for $40. You don't want to miss it. It's a lot of fun. And it's another one of those community events that Councilman Villarreal was talking about that brings people together and demonstrates just the pride of place that is Santa Fe. I don't have a score from the Little League game, but we're all rooting for our guys. A little bit of recognition and appreciation. The vehicle auction on June 17th was a massive success. It took months and months and months to organize, and every vehicle was sold. It was a great turnout. I went out there to welcome folks to kick it off. There were about 250 people not in the room, but under the tent, and another 500 online bidding from all over. I think the amount that was raised topped $700,000. It was a lot of money. Final count isn't in, but great success. And another one will be happening, I guess, in the fall. Pride on the Plaza was amazing to see Team Santa Fe matching shirts and a great deal of joy. I don't want to put Councilor Lindell on the spot any more than she already puts herself there, but sometime when you have a minute and you want a quiet reflection on how far we've come and how much further we have to go, get Councilor Lindell to talk about the first prides that she marched in and how different it is when people are cheering for you rather than throwing things at you. And calling you names. We're a very blessed community, and we shouldn't take it for granted, and we should mark progress because nothing comes without people putting themselves out there and sticking their neck out and standing up for what's right and taking sometimes abuse, even if they know it's the right thing to do, and they're going to get anger directed at them, doing it anyway. And I'm just proud of Councilor Lindell for her years and years and years of standing up and being counted and being courageous. Pothole Palooza. Now, rumor has it that we have potholes in Santa Fe. This is part 2.0, Pothole Palooza, just completed, thanks to our Public Works team. They undertook, they were given 105 CRMs of community reported potholes. 96 of them were completed, a very high completion rate. They patched 767 potholes in that 2-week period and permanently repaired more than half of those potholes during the month of June. Overall, since January of 2023, our Public Works Streets team has patched a grand total of 4,813 potholes. That is exceptional work, and we are very grateful for all that hard work. We haven't solved the pothole problem, but I have to salute the folks who are out there before dawn in the dark, getting an early jump on it and fixing potholes. And there will be more done, but I want everybody in the community to know that we are on the pothole problem and we have people working on it, and we're very proud of them. Pancakes on the Plaza and 4th of July to follow. Stay safe. Remember, as Councilor Rivera said, fire is nothing to be trifled with. Be very careful this 4th of July. It is 10 after 7. Let's go, Madam Clerk, then to our next item, which is petitions from the floor. If there are folks here in the room who want to speak to something that is not a public hearing on the agenda, now is the time to come forward, and we can give you 2 minutes to speak to any subject that you'd like to address the governing body. And we'll also look at the Zoom to see if anybody is zooming in, but the microphone is open.
Hello, my name is Stephen Box. I've been working for 3 years now to develop a branch of the United Nations in Santa Fe. It's going really well. I have 4 plans for resolutions for Undersecretary General. We've located in Santa Fe and not New York. We have the votes to get them passed. That means 1 more than half of the 193 members of the General Assembly. One problem, Antony Blinken is really busy with his trips to China and solving the major problems that are confronting this nation. And so he hasn't formally rewritten them, my resolutions. The nutrition one I've been working on since 1996. It's all based in the UN Charter numbers of the articles. So I'm happy to say that I know 2 people in this building that have written to Antony Blinken at my request. One is your assistant, Mayor Weber, and one is a stenographer here. I don't know anybody else. I've asked several times for the council to write to Antony Blinken and just give him your ideas. You don't have to be a proponent of what I'm recommending in terms of United Nations reform. Not just, who, and these are not subject to veto by the Security Council. A General Assembly measure that's passed are not subject to being vetoed by the Security Council. So those are 2 questions. If you have any questions, please let me know. now. And secondly, I would like to ask one of you, I've talked to the city clerk about using this room, not your chairs, of course, for a meeting to Santa Feans that are interested in seeing a branch of the United Nations in Santa Fe. And I'm not a city employee, so you need someone to make that possible. But do you have any questions?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, next, you have the microphone.
My name is Sergio Rodriguez, and to me it's an honor to speak to this governing body. The main concern is the progress, the security, the well-being of the Santa Fecian. I'm here because I've seen a problem here with certain people that they lack transportation. And I'm going to concentrate specifically on the bus system, the transportation. I'm retired and I live most of the time in Mexico. I come here 1 or 2 months to work. Here I'm a house painter contractor, and then I love this city. I lived here for 35 years, and then I've seen that tolerance that exists for the different cultures. Even now that you are listening or hearing my heavy Hispanic accent, on the bottom of you, you have to admit it and accept it and try to make an effort to understand me. I don't blame myself. My accent is my culture, is my education. I hire people from the Vargas Park, you know, sometimes 3 days, sometimes a week as a helpers. All of them, they've been complaining that the bus system is chaotic. To me, that I've been in Laredo, Texas, just briefly, but I had a chance to see the transportation system. It was amazing in the way that they work. And it is something that I criticize Santa Fe's bus system, because my helpers, they said to me that they don't respect the itinerary, the schedule. Sometimes they are late. And also, sometimes they don't know when is going to come the bus. So my petition is if from 5 to 9, it can be the bus system can pass every half hour. So the people that they don't have transportation.
Thank you.
They know for sure that it's going to pass.
Thank you.
That's all my.
We get it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Stephanie Beninato. I just want to point out to you that you totally ignored one of the basis for my appeal, which was the H board decision not to allow the design. And again, it was a recommendation that was supposed to have come to city council that has never come to city council. So first it went to H board. They're told only you make a recommendation, but hey, it doesn't really count. It's going to the BOA. Then the BOA makes a decision, but it goes back to the H board as well. That H board decision has never come to appeal. I thought it was going to. I thought they were waiting for the BOA to adopt the findings, and then the whole thing would come to the board. I only found out on May, whatever it was, that in fact, apparently it was never going to come to the board. And I don't know why, because Rodriguez Street, which was a denial of an exception, came to the board just a couple of weeks ago. So why is it being treated differently? And I really hope some of you, one of you will have the courage to introduce this amendment that I am proposing for this alleged discussion. An appellant always should be able to have notice and an opportunity to be heard, even when it's about dismissal of the case. And that does not happen here. And it is an absolute denial of due process. It says notice and a meaningful opportunity to be heard in the appeals statute itself in your appeals ordinance. It also says final decision is when findings of facts and conclusions of law are actually adopted. So you're not giving the public any chance to do this. The minutes are not up within 35 or 50 days necessarily. I requested minutes. It took 2 weeks or more to get those minutes. If you have to do it through EPRA, it takes even longer. Now, just a couple more comments. $35,000 that went to the wrong vendor. That Councilor Garcia, he was so rudely treated last week. This was an informational session that Ms. Oster was doing, and that question was totally appropriate as to what system, what checks and balances failed that allowed that $35,000 to go to the wrong vendor. And I think Ms. Oster really, public deserves an answer. One more thing, water meters. We have an agreement for a waiver, and now the city has ignored these agreements and is putting in smart meters. I've tried calling, I get run around. I left a message for Nancy Jimenez. I still have not gotten an answer. I do not want a smart meter on my water meter. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anyone in the Zoom room waiting to be heard under petitions from floor?
No, Mayor Weber. There's no one with their hands.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who wants to be heard at this time for something that's not related to a public hearing in the future, in the agenda tonight? If not, then we will move back to the matters from the city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Weber, councilors. I did just want to comment, there was a bunch of IPRA stories in the last week in the Santa Fe New Mexican. There was a comment that we had a vacancy that remained open in my office, and I just wanted to let everyone know that that vacancy just occurred. So I'm not sure where that characterization came from, but Greg Gouroulet moved over to Department of Cultural Affairs very recently. We already have the list, we're already doing interviews. So a couple of those, I think we're concluding interviews this week. So we hope to have a candidate to fill that position very soon, which is great because we do only have 3 people dedicated. And you probably noticed that Albuquerque has 15. So a headline maybe could have been Santa Fe processes 72% of Albuquerque IPRA's numbers, despite having 15% of the population, which is a huge burden. And our staff is working very hard on that. So I do want to thank them for all the hard work they're doing. And right now we do only have 2 of those 3 people, but we are quickly filling that 3rd position to get back to full capacity in terms of where we've been. And then I would like to recommend that we go into executive session pursuant to Part H, subparts 5 and 7 of Section 10-15-1 of the Open Meetings Act. And those are discussion of collective bargaining preliminary to collective bargaining negotiations, and I guess discussion of pending and threatened litigation in which the city is or may be a party, including but not limited to the city of Santa Fe versus the Board of County Commissioners of Santa Fe County.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, sir. I move that we enter an executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1H, subpart 5 for discussion of bargaining strategy preliminary to collective bargaining negotiations, and subpart 7 for discussion of threatened or pending litigation in which the governing body is or may become a participant.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Marworth.
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Cassett.
Yes.
Councilor Lee Garcia.
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell.
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
very good. We will now go into executive session. We'll be back as rapidly as we can complete this work. Thank you.
In Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1J, I move that the governing body reconvene in open session and state for the record that the matters discussed in the closed session were limited to those specified in the motion for closure.
Second.
There's a motion and there are 2 seconds. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
I had Counselor Romero Worth with the second. Yes, okay.
Be that way.
All right. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Actually,
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia. I don't know if he's back yet. Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
yes,
Motion has been approved.
very good. So let's go back to our regular order of business. Madam Clerk? I don't think there are any action items coming out of the executive session.
There are no action items coming out of executive, Mayor. You're correct.
All right, so item 14.
That would be me. Oh, bless you, Counselor. Matters from the city clerk. I will keep it brief. I just want to remind everybody that we have a spray down with the Santa Fe Fire Department on Saturday, July 1st. And then we also have our next movie in the park next Friday at Violinda Mall Park. I also just want to thank our staff. We are renewing liquor licenses in my office, and they are processing a ton of renewals and staying open through the lunch hour to accommodate all of our constituents and our local businesses, and doing an excellent job. So just a few quick items, and also thank my staff for their efforts in all of our events and activities this month.
Thank you. Let's move on then to the introduction of legislation. You can take us through that, please.
All right, the first item we have on introductions of legislation is consideration of a resolution sponsored by Counselor Cassett, Counselor Chavez, and Counselor Villarreal. It's a resolution accepting a local government road fund administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation for the planning and design of the Agua Fria Henry Lynch Roundabout project, identified as control number L500532.
Councilor Cassett and Councilwoman Villarreal, you want to introduce this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. It's pretty self-explanatory, but definitely looking forward to getting some improvements in this area. I know that this has been, especially Henry Lynch Road, there's been a lot of conversation around it. So very grateful for the Public Works team for moving this forward.
All good? Okay, thank you. That brings us to 18A, I believe, Madam Clerk.
Yes, we are now in public comment on bills. This is the first public comment, and there is no action on these items. The first is 18A. It's consideration of a bill number 2023-18, sponsored by Counselor Romero Worth. This is a bill amending section 7-1.1 SFCC 1987 to adopt the 2020 New Mexico Electrical Code, the 2021 New Mexico Plumbing Code, and the 2021 New Mexico Mechanical Code of the State of New Mexico Building Code as amended, and amending section 7-1.9 SFCC 1987 to remove language that is inconsistent with the 2021 New Mexico Plumbing Code.
Is there anyone either on the Zoom or here in this room who wishes to speak to this bill? This is public comment, a chance to address your take on this proposed legislation. Anyone on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
All right. Could you take us to the next item then?
Yes. The next item is item 18B. It's consideration of a bill number 2023-19. It's sponsored by Counselor Rivera. It's a bill amending Exhibit B of Section 21-7 to increase certain residential and commercial rates for service provided by the Environmental Services Division, to increase replacement fees for containers, and to remove language permitting one-time free replacement of containers.
Is there anyone who wishes to address this bill, either in the room tonight or perhaps on Zoom.
I do have Miss Stephanie Beninato on Zoom, Mayor.
Let's give her an opportunity to speak to this piece of legislation.
Stephanie?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, they can.
Thank you. I am opposed to having a fee for replacement. I can understand that sometimes people do damage the bins, but probably as much or more, the truck itself is damaging the bins by the way they're put down. And often they're put like so that the weight is on the lid, for example. So I think it's really inappropriate to charge taxpayers who are already paying a fee for carelessness, or maybe it just can't be avoided, the way the bins are put down and damaged. So why should we taxpayers have to bear that cost? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak during this public comment on this bill?
No, Mayor.
All right, in that case, let's go to item 18C, I believe.
That's correct. Item 18C is consideration of a bill number 2023-20. This is sponsored by Mayor Weber, Councillor Cassett, Councillor Melworth, and Councillor Michael Garcia. It's a bill relating to metropolitan redevelopment, deleting the content of section 7-2 regarding urban renewal, repealed by state law in 2008, and replacing it with the city's Metropolitan Redevelopment Code, sections 6-13 and 6-14, amended to be consistent with state law, deleting language specific to a business capital district, limit Metropolitan Redevelopment Commission leasing authority to that specified in a particular metropolitan development plan, and specify qualifications for Metropolitan Redevelopment Commissioners.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this bill, either on Zoom or in the room here tonight? Nobody. Okay. Thank you for that. In that case, we move on, Madam Clerk, to the next item on the agenda.
And Mayor, the next item on our agenda is item 20A. This is a public hearing for item 23 or 2023-006567 HDRB for 18 Apodaca Hill, downtown and East Side Historic District. Patricia and Gary Copran, agent owners, propose to construct a 2,026 square foot 13-foot ceiling high addition on the north, or 13-foot high addition. I apologize, I added a word, on the northeast side of a contributing structure, and a 204 square foot portal on the east primary elevation. Exceptions required to section 14-5.2 D2C to permit an addition greater than 50% of the existing building footprint.
Okay, let me kick this off with the process we'll be using. Reminding everyone that if anybody on the governing body was subject to some form of communication, lobbying that would prevent any of us from being fair and impartial, now is the time to recuse yourself. We'll start with the land use staff report, then go to a opening statement and sworn witness testimony from the applicants. The public can be sworn in comment. Governing body then will question staff, parties, witnesses, the public. And then when we've completed the questioning, we'll close the public hearing, entertain a motion and a second, and then discuss and ultimately vote. So is there anybody here who believes they cannot be fair and impartial? Okay, very well. In that case, we'll start with the land use report. Ms. Lamboy, if you can keep this under 20 minutes, that would be great.
Thank you, Mayor. I will keep it under 20 minutes for sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Weber and members of the council. I'm introducing, and if the screen could be updated, please, to show my PowerPoint. This is another exception request that the Historic Districts Review Board reviewed and made a recommendation to the governing body of approval. So the case or the site is located on 418 Apodaca Hill in the downtown and east side historic district. It's just the So the request, well, first of all, to orient you to the site, the site is located on the west side of Apodaca Hill in the downtown and east side. So to the north of the site would be Upper Canyon Road. To the west is Camino Cabra. It's that long site that's outlined in white is the subject of tonight's exception request. So the applicant is proposing to construct a single-story, 2,026 square foot addition to the existing house. Just as an interesting point of note, historic maps illustrate that Camino Militar, while it was there, was originally a secondary road. And then this piece where you see it almost looks like a driveway that curves around, that is Apodaca Hill. So it started out as having Upper Canyon Road addresses, but then expanded along as the families grew and that area developed. On Apodaca Hill, it has quite a bit of terrain. And so the properties are long and linear to provide for additional farming or gardening area for those people who lived in that area. The core structure was built in the 1930s. It was vernacular construction. And there have been changes made to the building since. It is designated as contributing, recognizing that buildings can change over time, but still retain a historic status and importance. So between the 1970s and 90s, there was a bay window that was inserted on the east elevation. And additionally, there was window and door replacement. In the 2000s, there was window replacement. 2016, the applicant originally came to the Historic Districts Review Board with this case. And the historic status was designated as contributing. And the primary facades were also designated at that time. The applicant did gain approval at that time, but did not construct the addition. So has come back to request or renew approval or renew the case. So just to provide you with a little context, in 2016, there was an addition that was added to the western side of the house. So going back to the point that things can change over time and bringing that forward to the applicant's request, things change over time with our families. And so the applicant needs additional space for a multi-generational family. And so the exception is requested to build an addition on the front elevation. That would be the east elevation. And it would exceed more than the allowable 50% of footprint as required by the Historic Districts Ordinance to not exceed or overall impede the character of the historic building. And just to illustrate, this is the proposed east elevation and proposed west elevation. So the east elevation is sort of internal to the courtyard. The applicant is also requesting the construction on a primary facade of a portal. Much of it has to do with drainage issues and the like. But the H board found that the proposed addition, as well as the proposed request for an addition to a primary facade, is acceptable in part because the portal addition will help to preserve the home from additional water damage, and it could be removed in the future without harming the historic status of the building. And so this bay window is where, on the right-hand side, the photograph is where the addition will be connected. And then you can see the building has been built in phases over time. The Historic Districts Review Board found that all approval criteria have been met. in that the addition will have similar materials, height, architectural treatments, and style. Also, the board further found that the exception criteria have been met and that what's being proposed does not damage the character of the district, especially because it complies with the Downtown East Side Historic District design standards, will not cause an injury to the public welfare, and also helps to strengthen heterogeneous character of the city through design options that are made available to families who have lived in the community for a long time and would like to remain in place to accommodate for more space. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you very much. That brings us then to the applicant's presentation and sworn testimony.
I'm sorry. I, Patricia Cochran, residing at 418 Apodaca Hill, solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony I have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury.
Very good. You have the floor. You have up to 25 minutes to make your presentation.
My presentation is brief. It's important because it's personal. This is home for me. Santa Fe is home. And the house is small, but it is close to my mother lives on the same street, and I have numerous cousins, lots of family. I come from a big family in Santa Fe. And so the choice is to make this home a place where I can enjoy my family. I wanted one bedroom is really wasn't sufficient. But the thing to keep in mind is the importance of the preservation of the home and a way of life. I want to continue to do the things that my ancestors have done to be a welcoming part of the community, which we have. This will make it easier to continue that. The garage is a concern of security. Unfortunately, there has been an increase in theft and vandalism that I had not to say that Santa Fe never had it, but this is something that has become more of a concern. And I guess bottom line, that's where I'm coming from. I will state one other thing is that although my neighbors have either casitas or multiple dwellings on the same size of lot, I have no objections. It's R5. It's R5. I just want a house where I can have the family, rather as opposed to having several casitas that would impede the family interaction.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Are there people waiting to testify, Madam Clerk, from the general public?
Mayor, Miss Stephanie Beninato would like to testify.
Okay, we need to swear her in.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Stephanie. I will have you state your name, and then you can say residing at with your street name, and then I'll keep the rest for you to affirm.
Okay. I, Stephanie Beninato, living in District 2.
We do solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury.
I do.
Thank you.
Very good. You
Okay.
have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I'm pretty sure you're gonna approve this, but I have to say that there is sort of a loss of the 1930s house and that it seems to, that it will be overwhelmed. And if my understanding is right, I thought it was 2,600 square feet that was being added, which seemed like a lot to talk about as needing more space if you already have a one-bedroom house. So I just kind of wonder about that. And I'm not sure here if people are living there all year round or if it's just for holiday interactions. And I feel that I don't, I feel that that people use that as a hardship when it's actually, I don't actually see how you would call it a hardship. And so, because it's common to a lot of people that a lot of people want to have their family there. So should we again destroy the uniqueness of Santa Fe? And I understand that the applicant's family and she have lived there for a very long time. But again, it's just, it feels like the character of Santa Fe is changing. And that's because I think smaller places were more common and now everyone wants something much bigger. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to testify on this matter? No. All right, in that case, I will open it up to the members of the governing body to ask questions of staff or the applicant or the sworn public member who just testified, as anyone wishes to see fit. I look for anyone who would like to raise their hand and begin some questions. There we go. Councilwoman, you have the
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question for staff. It's really about these cases that we're hearing. And I felt like we weren't going, is this going to be the process now? I thought we were changing it so that the decisions made at the HDRB were final unless there's an appeal. And in this case, it's not. So can you remind us that trajectory that we're on and if that's going to change anytime soon?
Mayor Weber, Councilmember Villarreal, the draft ordinance has been in place for a while now. There's been some back and forth on a bill sponsor versus a staff initiated text amendment to needing a sponsor again. And most recently, I spoke with Councilmember Lindell, and she has volunteered to sponsor it. And I'm just waiting on some feedback from our legislative team.
Okay.
And I've actually consulted with her this evening, so hopefully we can finish up the different items that we need to do.
Good to know. That's really my question because seems pretty cut and dry, and I don't think I don't think these kind of cases need to come to the governing body. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions this time? Anybody? Okay. If there are no more questions, I will close the public hearing and I will entertain a motion following which we will then discuss and finally take a vote. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll move to approve. Oh, right, there's official language.
There is some sample language.
Hold on. Unless you have it right there. Oh, man. It's in the memo. I apologize.
Move to approve the request for.
Oh, thank you. You move to approve the request for an exception to permit an addition that exceeds 50% of the footprint I imagine should be there, a historically contributing building and the addition of a portal on the primary facade.
Second.
There's a motion and there is a second. Is there discussion of the motion? Is there discussion? Counselor Lindell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm seeing on, the proposed, I think these questions at this point are from Ms. Lamboy. I thought that was public hearing. Yeah, I'll make a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion to reopen the public hearing and a second. Can you call a roll on that, please?
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera, Counselor Marworth,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
All right, Madam, Counselor Lindell, you have the floor for some questions.
Thank you. Thank you for reopening that. I don't have an extensive number of questions by any means. The current square footage of the house is about 2,400 square feet.
Mayor Weber, Councilmember Lindell, that is correct. Let me double check the drawings, but
It says existing heated square footage, actually 2,325 on the drawing.
yes, that is correct.
And the proposed addition is another 2,026 square feet.
Mayor, Councilor Lindell, that is correct.
So we're ending up with a almost 4,351 square foot house, which is big, in my opinion. Previous additions to this dwelling?
Mayor, Councilmember Lindell, there's been previous additions to the west elevation. That was done in 2016, and of course, the minor changes to windows.
And how much of an addition was put on in 2016?
In 2016, double check, just one moment. Maybe the applicant can help me with the addition. The applicant may be faster, but I'll continue.
You're going to have to come up to the microphone so it goes into the record.
A living room was added in the back.
How big is that?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I wasn't prepared to answer. But the existing. We do have it on the. Probably about 600 square feet. Because part of the problem was to preserve that back wall.
Mayor, Councilmember Lindell, the addition was approximately, I'm looking through the findings of fact and the big file size, 620 square feet was the size of the addition.
And was the addition for what we're looking at tonight also previously approved?
Mayor, Councilor Lindell, yes, that was approved back in 2017.
So why weren't they all done at once? We have 620 and now we're looking at over 2,000 square feet. And like I said, we're ending up with a really large house, 4351. Is there any reason why?
Most of that is not living space. It's, the garage takes up a lot of that square footage.
It's a heated garage?
No,
That's what the plans say.
I had not planned on heating it. If the plans have it for it to be heated, I can place heating in there, some type of heating. The entire addition will be Adobe, so it continues to keep the same architectural style. I didn't want a bunch of casitas on there, which would have been easier to do. Yeah, the other thing is, it's my home. It's not, this is not a VRBO. It's not a rental. It's not, I don't know if that's a concern, but architecturally, it blends in with the neighborhood.
What year were the windows changed out? And it said, I think on the thing, in the 2000s.
There's been numerous, in fact, when the historian did the review, he recommended that it was not a contributing structure because there had been so many changes to the structure itself. So there's, from what I can tell, I don't know when the bay window was put in. There's nothing of the 30s in the home.
Nothing of the what?
Of the 30s. You know, we're talking about the original structure. So, but that's a fairly common on that street, is that as people, maybe all they could initially put in was one room and added a second room shortly after. And as the family grew, they continued to expand their living areas. So most of the homes in the area have a vast array of sizes. The one immediately next to me is larger than 4,000 square feet. And it's got an additional casita on it, which is probably another couple of thousand square feet. On the other side of the property there are 3 structures. I guess the original structure was placed in the lower elevation of the property. There's another casita or 2, I'm not sure. And then the last casita was placed on the upper elevation. So I have no casitas.
Ms. Lamboy, on the window changes, do we have any record that there was application to the historic board to change out those windows?
Mayor, Councilmember Lindell, the window in the front, the bay window is from 1985. In the 1970s, although we didn't formally have a historic styles committee as it was initially called. So there's no record of that. The only record we do have was from 2016. And at that time, it was determined by the board that it's important to keep the vernacular character of the building. And even though the window replacements had taken place, that it's still retained enough of its character to be contributing.
Okay, I'm looking at page 63 of 64 on the first attachment. It's the elevation that you showed us. I'm really surprised that those three garage doors met the historic design criteria.
Mayor, Councilmember Lindell, garage doors, only if they are glass doors would really have an impact. The door will be color to match the stucco. So, they do comply with the ordinance.
To have it appear to be three garage doors.
Mayor,
I mean,
Councilmember.
three, it's one large, one double size and one small size garage door.
Yes, that's correct. And the edges of the garage door are set back 30 inches from the corner of the building. More than 30 inches.
So we don't really have a record of, other than the bay window, we don't really have a record of other windows in the house being changed out, correct?
Mayor, Councilmember Lindell, that's correct. There were some windows removed with the addition in 2016 on that west elevation, and that would be the only record. The rest of the building, I mean, as it related to that addition. Other than that, there's no other record.
So none of the other windows have appeared to have been changed out?
Mayor, Councilmember, none of the historic 1930s wood windows, as one would expect on a 1930s house, remain. Most of them are aluminum sliders, and of course, the anodized metal bay window.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions? The hearing is reopened, so if people have other questions, now is the time to ask. If there are no other questions, I will again close the public hearing. We did have a motion and a second on the floor, and that's also open to discussion now. Are there comments about the motion? Councilor Lindell?
Well, we went through a case a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how to compare this case to the last one. I'm just perplexed about the size of this addition. It's had an addition to it fairly recently. So this is a bit perplexing to me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. I find with Councilwoman Villarreal, these are all perplexing. I think what we are asked to do over and over again is to compare the criteria with the responses. I mean, at the end of the day, that's our responsibility. We're not really making deeply aesthetic decisions. We're trying to evaluate, as we did before with the question about code being met or not met. We have criteria, we have responses. There appears to have been no public testimony on this proposal regarding the case at the hearing. So it didn't evoke at the prior hearing. Really, because it says here that no members of the public spoke regarding the case at the hearing. So maybe the report's wrong, but tonight we did have public testimony, true. I guess my point is that we're looking at something that if it meets the criteria, we as decision makers are not asked to substitute our personal opinion for how much is enough or how big is too big. We're looking at the overall criteria individually and then evaluating the responses of the applicant and the staff. And that match of criteria and response is really where we get to weigh in. And the finding in front of us is that the criteria have been met. Any other comments or questions at this time? If there are none, I would ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Rivera,
No.
Counselor Marworth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
thank you. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Thank you, staff. Thank you, applicant. Thank you, witness who testified. Madam Clerk, can you take us to the next item on the agenda, please?
Yes, the next item is appointments for our Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We have a reappointment of Yolanda Eisenstein for District 1, with her term being from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2025. An appointment of Ben Bingley for District 3. It's a reappointment of a second term for July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025. And Angela Bordigari for District 4. It's a new appointment with a term from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2025.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Counselor Michael Garcia, do you want to speak to these, sir?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. These appointments bring us to full capacity at BPAC, and just excited to have the folks being opportunity to have them be reappointed and bring along a new team member to BPAC.
Thank you. Other questions or comments about the appointments? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Rivera, Counselor Marworth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
thank you. 21B,
Those are appointments for our Economic Development Advisory Committee. We have three, two reappointments and one appointment. We have Kenneth Resnick for a reappointment, Kim Schaeffenbauer for a reappointment, and Zachary Nagel for an appointment.
is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
You want to speak to these, Counselor Cassett?
Sure. Really excited to have member Resnick and member Schiffbauer back, and of course, adding member Nagel. I know it's not on there, but I believe these are 2-year appointments, so they would be ending on June 1st is actually when our appointments at 2025, just so that's clear. We will actually be coming with 2 more because we do have some more vacancies that we need to fill, but this will get us started. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions about these appointments? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Rivera, Counselor Marworth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
thank you. 21C, please.
Yes, these are 2 appointments for the Historic District Review Board. We have Amanda Mather and David Valdo.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Fails for lack of a second.
Second.
Oh, there is a second. Okay. I would just say about these appointments that as we are witnessing tonight, the Historic District Review Board is one of our very, very significant land use and design citizen bodies. We rely on them for lots of recommendations and to do often very difficult and challenging cases. These are both people who have been given a great deal of positive recommendations by others, and they help fill out the H board and they can do their work with these appointments. So I'm glad we're able to move forward with these folks, and I appreciate their willingness to take on what is a very difficult task. Madam Clerk, do you want to call the roll, please?
Yes. Counselor Lindell, Counselor Rivera, Counselor Marworth,
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
How about the last appointment?
Yes, Mayor, the last appointment is for Len Rand and it's for the Airport Advisory Board and it is a reappointment.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilor Rivera, do you want to speak to this at all?
Lynn's been a member in good standing for a while. Lucky to have him.
He does good work. Thank you, sir. Other comments about this appointment? Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Counselor Rivera.
Yes.
Counselor Marworth.
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Yes.
Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Lindell. Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
Thank you. That completes tonight's business. Thank you, everyone. We stand adjourned.